We have a small coronal hole rotating in through the Earth strike zone, and are you ready for the Perseids? Those stories and more in the news this week. This forecast sponsored in part by Eric Johansson. Check him out at instagram.com/scubist. Space weather this week is definitely calming down. We do have a bit of a remnant coronal hole that's going to be rotating in through the Earth strike zone this week, but it's not going to send us all that much. We get some maybe sporadic pockets of fast solar wind that aren't going to be all that fast. So we could get Aurora down to high latitudes, but most likely not much more than just some unsettled conditions at mid latitudes and not much of an Aurora show. Meanwhile, the disk continues to be pretty much spotless. We do have a few bright regions here and there that kind of pop up a little bit and then recede and disappear. So they're not really boosting the solar flux all that much. Amateur radio operators and emergency responders, I hate to say it, but once again, we're still dealing with poor radio propagation on Earth's day side, and it looks like this is going to continue easily over the next week. Switching to our MFLAR threat meter, as you can see, the X-ray flux continues to be very low and flatlined, and therefore by proxy the solar flux continues to be low. I can't even remember the last time I actually saw a real solar flare or had the flux anywhere near the sea floor. We are sitting below the B floor, and it looks like this is just going to continue. This means that solar flux continues to be in the 60s. Radio propagation continues to be very poor on Earth's day side, so you're going to have to deal with things like sporadic E. And the only people who are loving this type of thing are GPS users because it helps GPS reception stay spot on. Switching to our solar storm conditions, as you can see, back on August 5th, we actually got hit by some sustained fast wind from a decent-sized coronal hole that rotated through the Earth strike zone. It bumped us up to storm levels for more than half a day, and then it tapered off kind of slowly. And this brought Aurora clear down to mid-latitudes and gave Aurora field reporters some much-needed love. And trust me, they took advantage of it. There's some gorgeous shots that are from all over the place, especially in the Western Hemisphere, from this great storm that we weren't really expecting to be quite as big as it was. But anyway, since then, things have kind of settled down, and now we're back to kind of unsettled conditions and down to quiet conditions and back up to unsettled. And this is really what the story is going to continue to be easily over the next week until we get another chance in probably about 2 weeks to get that same coronal hole back on Earth's side. And during that recent solar storm we had back on August 5th that lasted almost a day, it brought some gorgeous aurora clear down to mid-latitudes pretty much all over the Western Hemisphere. Now, I don't have a chance to show all of the field reports I got in this episode, but I will show some of them next week as well. But let's start with this gorgeous one from Ontario. And it was seen in British Columbia. It was seen in Manitoba. And some gorgeous views in Saskatchewan. And it was also seen all over Alberta. And as we dip down into the United States, it was seen in Maine and in Michigan. It was seen in Minnesota. And it made it all the way down to Colorado. And the Aurora Australis was also seen in New Zealand and in Tasmania. So what else does our sun have in store for us this week? Well, this is Stereo A. It's our partially back-sided monitor. You can see here's Earth, here's the sun, and here's Stereo A staring at the sun from the side. And when you look at Stereo's view, well, the story is kind of bland. We do have a coronal hole that's in the southern hemisphere that's going to be rotating into Earth view here in the next few days, if it's not already beginning to be seen in Earth view. And that could give us a little bit of a solar storm, probably for high latitudes only, though. It's probably not going to be that much of a disturbance. But then if you look on Stereo's east limb view, you actually will see the coronal hole that gave us the storm levels back on the 5th. That is now coming back into Stereo's view, and that means that in the next week or so, that's going to be back into Earth view, and it could give us yet another solar storm, maybe something decent to bring Aurora down to mid-latitudes again in about 2 weeks or ish, give or take an ish, right? But meanwhile, if you look at the rest of the disk, There really aren't any bright spots that are notable. There are a few that come in and fade out and stuff like that, so it's pretty much the same thing that we see on Earth's side. There's just nothing that's going to end up boosting that solar flux for amateur radio operators and emergency responders, so it looks like the radio propagation on Earth's side is going to remain poor, easily over, I hate to say it, the next 2 weeks. Switching to our moon, we are now coming to the full moon phase, with the full moon being on the 15th. So you night sky watchers who are out looking for the Perseid meteor shower that is peaking right now, the best idea is to look to the east horizon just before dawn, while the moon is setting and before the sun has risen and it's still dark. And now for your Martian Minute. It's Sol 251 on the red planet, and winds are picking up out of the south-southeast at 18 meters a second. Dust storms are continuing along the southern polar hood and have spread a bit further north over Solus Planum, central Cimmeria, and the southeast region of Valles Marineris. Looking to the north, small dust storms have also been seen in northern Acidalia as they've moved southward across that region. Near the equator, skies have been mostly sunny except for some ice clouds forming in the afternoons. But thankfully, Curiosity rover in Gale Crater and the InSight lander on Elysium Planitia have enjoyed clear but brisk weather, with highs around minus 27 Celsius and overnight lows dipping below minus 100. Switching to your solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating that small pocket of fast solar wind to hit us, but it's not going to last all that long. At high latitudes, NOAA is expecting active conditions with up to about a 25% chance of a minor storm. But at mid-latitudes, we're only expecting unsettled conditions with maybe about 10% chance of active conditions, so we're not really expecting aurora down at mid-latitudes. This is going to be a high-latitude show, if any at all, and it's going to be fleeting, and it definitely will quiet down even through the weekend. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, we are still dealing with a solar minimum sun and a spotless sun at that. That means everything is in the green for big flares. We have no worries for radio blackouts, and this should make GPS users on Earth's day side very happy. We also have a low solar flux. We're sitting essentially in the mid-60s. So again, this should make GPS users at low latitudes very happy, because your GPS reception should be pretty spot on. As far as amateur radio operators and emergency responders are concerned, though, radio propagation is in the dumper. We're still dealing with poor radio propagation on Earth's day side, and without any really strong solar storms to kind of help things out, we're really not seeing a lot of radio propagation at all. And this is the trend that's going to continue for quite some time yet. Now, also because we do have that solar minimum sun, the cosmic ray penetration is stronger than it normally would be. So you frequent flyers, and this does include air crew who are flying at high latitudes and high altitudes and flying over 800 hours annually, you are in the moderate range for radiation dose, and this does include prenatal passengers, so please take this into consideration in your flight plans. So the space weather this week is definitely quieting down. We do have a coronal hole that's rotating in through the Earth's strike zone here in the next couple days, but don't expect it to be all that much. It's going to send us a small pocket of fast wind, but most likely the storming is going to be limited to high latitudes. So your aurora photographers, if you're at high latitudes, you'll probably get a little bit of a show, but it won't last all that long, and it should probably quiet down in through the weekend. Now, amateur radio operators and emergency responders, well, again, the story continues to be the solar minimum sun with no bright points really all that effective, and the solar flux is staying in the mid-60s. So radio propagation on Earth's day side continues to be poor, and it's just going to continue to be like that easily over the next week, maybe even longer before we get a reprieve. The only good news is that you GPS users, your reception should be pretty spot on all the way around the globe, because we don't really have any strong solar storms, and because that solar flux remains low. I'm Tamitha Skov. Thank you for watching.